Welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Alex Wolf here, and I have a very special guest today. I have Matthew Miranda with me, who writes about the Knicks for the Strickland and Posting and Toasting, and does two different podcasts, the Believe in Knicks pod and the Jacobin Sports Show. We are, of course, talking about the Knicks 145 to 135 embarrassment of a loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder at home, even after a historic best ever in Knicks history, 48-point first quarter. The Knicks still managed to fall to the Thunder. And we're not super happy with one Tom Thibodeau, and maybe happy with some other players that we'll get to towards the end. But we're going to get into that next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. And I want to thank you all for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us a part of your daily routine. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And as I said in the intro, I am not joined by Gavin. He had a very long week of broadcasting. He is, after all, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. So I have a special guest again to help me break down this game. I have Matthew Miranda, who, again, I mentioned in the intro, is a writer for The Strickland and for Posting and Toasting about the Knicks. Also hosts the Believe in Knicks podcast and the Jacobin Sports Show. Miranda, I'm going to just jump right into it. We got a lot to talk about as it pertains to this team here. There's a lot that went on in this game. The Thunder, of course, the Knicks have a 48-point first quarter. Look like they're going to have a great offensive showing, except then the Thunder made some adjustments and changed things up on D and started disrupting what the Knicks were trying to do. The Knicks also got a little unimaginative. After being great in that first quarter, they kind of went back to being a little stagnant, probably resting on their laurels a little bit. Meanwhile, the Thunder just said, well, we can get inside as much as we want and we can shoot as many threes as we want. This seems pretty great. They shot 62.5% overall, 54.8% from three. The Knicks just never really played good defense. It looked like maybe they gave the impression that they were in the first quarter because they were up by 12, but really their offense was just on another planet. And their defense was really not that good. They still gave up high 30s in that quarter, 36 points, I think. That's not a good quarter for any NBA team. And they kind of just, as usual, pretend like threes counted as ones, maybe. Definitely not three-pointers. They thought they're worth way less and not way more. But they also just couldn't clean up the perimeter defense, which Mitchell Robinson usually does. Like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander struggled a bit to start, but Josh Giddey and Lou Dort kind of held it down, and then Shai explodes for 21 in the third quarter, and that was kind of all she wrote. I'll give two quick stats, Miranda, and then throw it to you for some analysis here. But just a couple quick things I wanted to note, since we're in a lucky position where we're recording this later in the day after a matinee, so the stats have updated already on NBA stats. But the Knicks are allowing almost 40 three-pointers attempted per game right now, which is the most in the league. They're 25th in the league now after this game in raw opponent points per game, and they're now 23rd in defensive rating, which I must remind is a stat where the first 2 years under Tibbs has been like the thing they could hang their hat on, was that defensive rating. The fact that they were like top 3 in that his first season when he won Coach of the Year. They managed to recover quite well post Kemba Walker last year and get their rating up into the top 10 again. And we're, I think by some metrics, the number one defense in the NBA post All-Star break last year. None of that seems to be there this year. And that's sort of the calling card of the coach. So I think we have a lot to talk about as far as Tibbs, as far as the game itself. I'll kind of throw it to you first. Like, what is the thing that is most prevailing on your mind right now after the Knicks lose this game?
So On the defensive end, which I think is the bigger issue at the moment, because like you said, that's supposed to be the thing that you can trust with this coach. So one thing that stands out to me watching the game today, and it stood out since the season has started, is that the Knicks, there's a Pizza Hut in my town that's been closed for years. It's just this dead, empty building. And we call it the Pizza Hut that time forgot because it looks like, just abandoned. And I was trying to explain to my daughter, like, the appeal of going to Pizza Hut when I was a kid. Like, you would go there and they'd bring a pitcher of Pepsi. I'm not a Coke person. I'm a Pepsi person. So a big ass pitcher of Pepsi and that hot, greasy pizza. And they had, like, video games. And until very recently in human history, that was a thing. It's unfathomable now. It doesn't make any sense if you tell someone about it now. That is the Knicks defense. For most of basketball history, what they say they want to do, you can't argue with it. Like, it makes sense. We don't want people getting the easiest shots. We would rather have people taking the hardest shots. Perfectly logical. Except you have to be like one of those families that lives in a bomb shelter and hasn't come out for a while to not understand that things have changed and that teams are now so much better at that shot that used to be hard that you're not getting them by making them take that shot. It doesn't matter that the Knicks like to say this is what we are. We are a team that denies dribble penetration and closes off the lane. You could argue with that philosophically, but the major issue right now is that they don't even do that. The game today was a relentless charge of literally anyone on the Thunder who had the ball against anyone on the Knicks. Was go ahead, here's a lane, take it, and either because Mitchell Robinson is out and Hartenstein played most of the game and he's not that level of rim protector, so either you were watching guys pull up right to the paint, Shea had a million little pull-ups right there. The Thunder had a million cuts and backdoor cuts, and so it doesn't matter if you say we're this if you can't do it. And if you can't do it, it's insane to keep trying the thing that you can't do. So the concern on the defensive end, and it's been this way since the start of the season, because the Thunder are hardly the only team to exploit this very simplistic, Knick defense. Like, if you can do this one thing, you can kill them. And we saw Boston do it. We saw Cleveland do it. We've seen the Thunder do it. This is now the 5th year in a row that they've won in New York. What is plan B? And this has, for me, always been the concern with Thibodeau. The biggest problem with Thibodeau reminds me of professors who, like, they make their curriculum in the summer, and that is what they are doing. And it doesn't matter what their class is like. It doesn't matter how circumstances change. These are the people who really struggled when COVID happened because they look for their content to bend to their form. And Thibodeau does that too, and that doesn't work. And it's clearly not working. Defensively, I hold that against Tom Thibodeau. I think there's something different going on with the offense that is problematic, and I don't place the blame for that on Tibbs. But on the defensive end, you have to have something, and he doesn't. And that concerns me because we're 13 games into the season, and everybody knows this is how you beat the Knicks.
Yeah, and this is something that, like, we were talking about this before the show, that because I get to read your writing like all the time because it's we both do this on the Strickland, and like I was reading your recap the other day against the Pistons, and it was like, this is the expected outcome. The Knicks won a game they were supposed to, and I was like, it's so funny because I could simultaneously nod my head to that and say, yeah, the Knicks this year do seem to have a talent level that would suggest like they're better than the worst teams, but they're not nearly as good as the best teams, especially because of who the coach is and what his philosophy is. But the more that I sat and thought about it after today, and I had this thought against the Pistons, but I kind of let it get buried because I'm like, well, you know what? Ultimately, a win is a win. But the reality is that even in some of these games that the Knicks have beat, worse teams this year, like the Pistons, there's always been this lingering thought of, yeah, but they could lose because like they aren't defending the three. And all it takes is for an NBA player, all of whom pretty much now, especially it seems like off the Knicks, like are attempting to shoot threes all the time. All it takes is for one of these guys to just hit the wide open shot a few times, and you can have a 10-point swing in any given game. And the Knicks absorbed that against the Pistons the other day, actually. Like they said Isaiah Livers beat us, and he almost did. Like that's the worst part. Like a team without their best player, without last year's number 1 overall pick, almost came back and beat the Knicks on their home floor because the Knicks just can't hold a lead. And the reason that they can is because their coaches decided that threes don't matter. But that is really that has been the strategy of the Knicks the whole time under Tibbs. And it worked before because even if you didn't have Mitchell Robinson, you still had Nerlens Noel or Taj Gibson, who in their own special ways could do similar things to what Mitch does, which is deter people from getting all the way to the hoop. But to your point, like Hartenstein is good, but he's not that good at doing that. And he has a tendency to foul. And Jericho Sims, for as good as he is as a rebounder and getting vertical and everything else, he doesn't have that same, ability to deter people from the rim either. And then the Knicks have no other plan other than that. So they got this really interesting player in Hartenstein that can give them new looks on offense and stuff, but that you need to plan a little differently for on defense as the coach of the team. And Tibbs has no plan to do that. And it's kind of biting them in the butt now. I want to continue this. I want to throw that back to you in just a sec, Matt. But first, I do just have to quickly let everybody know that today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. And you guys know how it goes. Every potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. And I'm not often one that's in much of a situation to be hiring, at least not at the level where I'd make a posting on a job site. But as a person who has looked for jobs, LinkedIn is often the one that I go to, the job board that I love, because something about that algorithm, I am always seeing jobs on LinkedIn that I would never in my life have thought to apply for otherwise, that once I click in, I say, wow, that's exactly my skill set. And it's not a bunch of like weird entry-level sales positions like you see on that other site that starts with an I. So from my perspective, it's a pretty great website. So all you have to do, you just add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile, and you can spread the word that you are hiring. They have simple tools like screening questions to make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, and we're back to continue talking about this 145 to 135 loss. Miranda, I'm gonna toss it to you. I mean, I think the main thing so we just spent the whole first segment basically talking about how Tibbs obviously has this team playing in such a way that does not work in today's NBA. And it's funny, we had a discussion before we started the show where you were like, I'm always like the last person to ever say that a coach should be fired, because it's, and I'm sort of with you in the sense of like, you don't ever want to like put someone out on their butt. Like you don't ever want to like be saying like, hey, this guy should be out. But in this particular case, I mean, I'm not too worried about him from a financial perspective because he's going to get quite a few more millions of dollars in a buyout or whatever. But the way that Tibbs is coaching this team at this point, I just don't think, I mean, we haven't even gotten to the rotations in this game, which I think were very lackluster as well and didn't do anything to help the Knicks in any way, like playing Evan Fournier for 20 minutes when like he doesn't seem to have the confidence to do anything on a basketball court right now. But like, I just think it's time. You know, I made our little, like, we do a little short video that we put on, you know, YouTube and whatever. And I was like, I think it's time for Tibbs to go. Like, your alleged defensive coach just gave up 145 points to a team that in like 3 weeks from now will probably start sitting guys and trying to lose. You know, I don't think that this is a good place to be for the team right now. And I don't think it's really drawing the best out of the players in any way to play for this coach that also, on top of having a not great scheme, also seems to not be doing much to hold players accountable. And that includes everybody from the vets, like a Julius Randle, to a younger player like an RJ Barrett, who really needs to develop the better habits at this point in his career to help lead this team going forward now that he signed a big contract extension. I just don't really like anything of what Tibbs is bringing to the table right now. And he feels a smidge like a lame duck, but also weirdly, I almost equally think that he could coach the whole season and the Knicks would say, oh, we'll bring him back next year and see nothing wrong with this. Where are you at with Tibbs right now, though?
In addition to the defensive concerns, and this is where I think it starts to seep for me, Thibodeau has things to answer for. I think the front office does too. And I think because this particular front office, and I know it doesn't seem to bother a lot of people, but it bothers me that they are like the one team in literally all of professional sports that can't be bothered to have a press conference or talk to the media. I think you lose certain benefits of the doubt with that. So I think Thibodeau's taking a lot of heat for a lot of things, some of which are his fault. The defense is one. And another point that I find more baffling is, you know, the front office was hired ultimately to get the Knicks back in business with a star. And the Knicks had an opportunity this summer to trade for one in Donovan Mitchell. And the Knicks decided that Utah was asking for too much of their future, too much of their young players and their picks and all that kind of thing. And regardless of what you think of that decision, if that's what the franchise decides in August, when all this trade talk, September, is heating up, you cannot, in game 13 of the season, have Evan Fournier playing almost as many minutes as Obi and Grimes combined. It doesn't make sense on any level. It's not like Fournier is having a great season, so he deserves the minutes. It's not like Fournier has adjusted well since he's been benched. He's 5 of 25 since that's happened. He looks shot. His confidence isn't there. In the game, he couldn't even when he could get past someone who was closing out on him, in a second, they were like right back on him. Fournier looks completely lost. He's playing 20 minutes. Obi came in the game and hit his first three, and I was struck by, I remember this happening with Charles Oakley. When Riley came to the Knicks, Riley early on said that after Patrick Ewing, like, Charles Oakley was their best mid-range shooter. And it was a weird thing to think about, but it was true. Like, Oakley had evolved that part of his game, and he really was that good from free throw line extended. Obi Toppin has now become, outside of the Quentin Grimes hasn't really been healthy and present enough to really evaluate on that level. Obi Toppin has been as good, if not better, a three-point shooter than anyone else on this team right now. When he is in his rhythm and he puts up his shot, I feel better about Obi right now than really almost anybody. He can't be playing 15 minutes a game. Either Quentin Grimes is healthy or he's not. If he's not, you got to bench him. And, thankfully Reddish has been, we'll talk more about Cam Reddish later, I'm sure, but, he's done well in that role, fine. You can't have Obi Toppin playing 15 minutes a game. You can't have Quentin Grimes playing 8 minutes a game when your organization decided, like, okay, our youth is something. Like, our youth is worth holding on to more than acquiring a 25-year-old all-star who is dying to come play for us. Then Tom Thibodeau cannot be playing Evan Fournier 20 minutes a night. If RJ Barrett is going to have one of these bad RJ games, I'm sorry. I know we love him. I know he has this sort of, now it's chipping a bit, but this golden boy quality. RJ has to sit. when he plays these kinds of awful games. But like you were saying, I don't get a sense of complete unity between. I can't imagine the coach and the front office are on the same page, because it wouldn't make any sense to me. But since they're not, is like Thibodeau like the heavy in the friendship with Leon Rose, and like Leon Rose is this little, nebbish who just has a hard time telling his friend, "Hey Tom, you're messing up." Like, I don't know what the deal is there. Something doesn't add up in terms of how the players are being used. And that's another thing I think you can point on Thibodeau and say, what the hell are you doing? Because this is not even a case of, well, you win with the vets or you lose with the kids. We know from last year that's not the case. And we've seen it this year. So what is I don't know what the relationship is between this coach and this front office. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's an intriguing question, and one that I don't really know the answer to either. I'm with you. I mean, there is something to be said for allegedly Tibbs too over the offseason was saying, Quentin Grimes, I want him on the team, and keep him off the table when it comes to this Mitchell stuff, because I don't
featured him in the summer league,
yeah. And it seemed like he was going to have a huge role. Now, I can understand he's trying to work his way back, but there are certain games where you say, especially once the Knicks had already lost the lead and everything in this game, and you have Fournier, closing down the stretch, and that lineup, in spite of Fournier, was like basically treading water. They're basically going blow for blow with OKC down the stretch, which great, but you're already down by 10 after you led by 12 earlier in the game. Like, you need to do something a little better than tread water at that point. You need to try to find something that wins the game for you. And instead, Tibbs was kind of just like, well, this weird Frankenstein unit of quickly Fournier, Reddish, Randall, and Sims, I think it was, down the stretch, is going to close for us, because they played good for like a minute, and they managed to get it like within single digits or whatever, only to then basically just sit there at arm's length at double digits all the way through the end of the game. And that's the point where you say, okay, yeah, is Grimes healthy or is he not? Like, what's the answer here? Like, it's like in football. Like, football often, especially if you play fantasy football, you deal with this all the time. Like, you'll see guys that have the questionable tag all week, and they'll be like, I mean, it's like Josh Allen this week, right? Like, if you had him, I had him in one fantasy league, and it was like, oh man, like Josh Allen, like he's, he didn't practice any day this week. Like, someone saw him and he looked really uncomfortable and like he was in pain. Like, during the limited session, he was getting on the side, blah, blah, blah. And like, it's like, okay, but if he's active on Sunday, he's playing, and he's going to play 100%. And that's what's going to happen. Like, no matter what, like if you're active, you're active. And if you're not, you're not, and there's no like scaling guys back in that sport. And often there's not in the NBA either. Like, for most of the time, like if you get cleared to play a game, you're good to go. Like, that's always the implication. If you get cleared from an injury, that you're set. And I understand Grimes has some things to work through, but what better time to just like throw him out there and see what sticks, if than this game where it's like you're treading water. You have Fournier out there who's not contributing anything to either end, and you have a unit that's sort of coalescing in a little bit that maybe could use a little bit more D and a little bit more 3, and you have a 3 and D guy sitting right there. It didn't make any sense to me to not throw him back out there. But you know what? Let's continue talking about this. Is good. We're talking about almost positive type things. I think we can hone in on a couple of positives from this game to close out the show, because there was definitely a couple at least, which is great. But first, I do have to let everybody know that today's show is brought to you by BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. They've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. Perhaps you can find Locked On Knicks there. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get, or they are always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. And if you want to take a look at an interesting thing, maybe there will be a similar one this up there for Tibbs soon. Will Steve Nash be an NBA head coach next season? You can currently bet on that if you want a fun little thing to bet on. If you say yes, that's a plus 200. No is a minus 300. So that seems that BetOnline does not think that Steve Nash is going to get another job. I'd probably be inclined to believe that. So check that out and maybe keep an eye out for some interesting Knicks props coming up. I'm seeing some Julius Randle trade rumors coming up now all of a sudden. So anyway, head to the website betonline.net today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. All right, and we're back to get into our third and final segment here. And as I said, there's some positive things to talk about from this game. I think it's time to – we got our licks in on Tibbs and the defense and deserved ones. This was honestly top 5 to 10 embarrassing Knicks game in recent memory. I mean, there's so many to choose from always, but
yeah, there are.
As I was watching this, I was just like, there was that feeling of impending doom when they dropped 48 in the first quarter, came out looking a little stale in the second, and then you sat there and started doing the math, and you're like, well, wait, but they did give up 36 in the first quarter. So that's not very good. And then they gave up 43 2 quarters in a row, 5 points off of their amazing quarter that they had in the first and lost the game. But anyway, I said I was going to be positive. Cam Reddish had his best game as a Knick, I think, bar none. I think there's a game where I think this is his high point total since being on the Knicks too. 26 points. He had 4 steals, 10 of 17 shooting, 4-4 from the free throw line. My impression of this game, Miranda, is at first it seemed like he was kind of just like doing the Cam Reddish thing where he like dangles like a carrot out there for you of like, look at how great my athleticism is and look at how cool all these things I can do are, except for I can't finish layups. Like I could get 98% of the way there and I could do like the coolest reverse you've ever seen in your life, but then it's just going to be a little too hard and come off the rim. Hartenstein cleared up one of those, another one just missed, like whatever. You were just like, okay, it's just going to be another Reddish game like that. Except for then they start going in and then he really got rolling on the offensive end and he was just a freaking dynamo in this game. And I thought defensively as well, he was one of the only guys on the team that was really interested in setting a defensive tempo in this game. Like he was getting after it every single play. He was trying to get around screens. He was trying to stick with his man as hard as he could. He was playing passing lanes. He had great hands, everything else, like all the best experience of Reddish on the defensive end, I thought was on display in this game. And I don't know. I think it was really unfortunate that it sort of got wasted by the fact that the rest of the team blew chunks for the most part in this game. But Cam Reddish, I thought, was just absolutely fantastic.
Cam was great. It was interesting to see him get the chance to play in a game where the Knicks, part of why I was worried very early on was that the Knicks were having success playing the Thunder's style and the Thunder's pace. And that doesn't suit a lot of Knicks, but it does suit Cam. So you get to see, I think, the best of him more in this kind of a track meet kind of a game. He's like the counterfeits pretty well. Like he's got the athleticism. I love his athleticism. He kills me like 3 times a game. He just kills you with. He had a play where he was like double teamed and like tried to split the double, like going behind his back, and ended up like, and it was in the 4th. It was a bad time to do it, and he got the ball like trapped on his back. It was basically like on a platter for the Thunder to just take away. But that is Cam Reddish. Cam, they used to say that's Manny being Manny. That's Cam being Manny. I love Cam. I love him a lot. I think more than I would in other contexts because he's such a chaos energy kind of player, and Tom Thibodeau is so towards like order and predictability, and Cam is not. Like I wrote in the recap after the Piston win that I was happy with the fact that like the Knicks are solid. They're more solid than the Knicks are solid enough to be predictable, which for many years the Knicks have been a team that have been so bad that like they were never a team that could look down on anybody. Like the Knicks were the team that everybody else on the schedule was like, okay, there's a win. So just the Knicks getting solid is like an achievement. Cam Reddish is not a solid. That guy's like plasma. He's some other state. but it works beautifully at times on this team because they don't have many people like that. Even some of their young players, Grimes, RJ, they're not. I think they trend more towards like if it's chaos, it's controlled. Cam is more, especially with RJ, but Cam is just like he's so fun to watch. He's more fun, I think, than he is good. He's good. I mean, I'm happy to see. I would not have guessed 13 games into this season that Cam Reddish would have started 5 games in a row and looked pretty good doing it. I would not have guessed that. That I think is a definite positive.
I also would have never guessed that he would have won Tibbs's favor, despite everything that you said about how much he's not a player that Tibbs likes. And clearly Tibbs hated that acquisition last year because he took forever to even play the kid in a game.
Yep.
But like, I think he's actually like won a rotation spot for himself, no matter who he coaches at this point, which I think is a huge testament to him this year.
Yeah. They have to make a trade. They cannot go through another season with 14 people who need to play. Like, or they can't do it. But yeah, God bless Cam. I mean, not just in terms of he's playing better and bringing them things that are valuable, but like he's just very fun to watch.
Yeah, he definitely. I think I've definitely talked about this on here at some point before, but like on a team full of guys that play sort of like old dudes, like very ground bound, like Quickly and Brunson's whole game is just like head fakes and hezzies and stop start, like Randall's whole game is like posting up and whatever. Like RJ's whole game is just kind of like bullying his way inside, and even Grimes, it's like he has a picture perfect jumper, but like he plays pretty ground bound too. Like no, I guess other than Obi and Sims, like, but those are big, so it's different. Like Cam is the only wing on this team that has like that like wow factor athleticism that is the stuff that like stars are made out of. And I don't know that he's a star, but he certainly got that it factor. I mean, maybe his eventual best case scenario ends up being like Andrew Wiggins or something, where he's really embraced his role at this point. And while I don't think he ever has had the raw talent that Wiggins had early in his career, nor the green light that Wiggins had earlier in his career, like I think he's got the potential to, on a different trajectory, ends up basically where Wiggins is at this point in his career, which is like a high level role player that maybe will push for like one all-star team at some point in his career, like when he's like 28 or something, if he's on a really great team. But that'll just kind of like make wow plays, learn to play fantastic defense that helps the team no matter who he gets switched on to because of his length, and just turns into like a real bona fide NBA player. Almost like to reference another Warrior, like a late career Andre Iguodala or something like that too. Just like the glue guy that plays defense, that could score, that every once in a while is going to give you like a 30-point game, but mostly is going to give you like flighty 3-point shooting and a really nice razzle dazzle to his game, and definitely always needs to be covered, but isn't necessarily going to be your best player or anything. So big ups to him.
But he might be a starter, and he has the gifts where Cam Reddish's energy will translate. I feel like if you're late in the last 2 minutes of a big game against a good team, Cam Reddish's skills still translate. He's not someone who like, some guys get capped off at a certain level. Cam doesn't have that. And I think that's another nice thing to his credit. Cam Reddish very much to me is like the bishop in chess. Like nobody moves like the bishop. They just cut these diagonals and like Cam going to the basket, Cam in transition. Yeah, man, I like Cam.
I can never possibly top that like analogy there. So I'm just gonna let that Bishop one ride, because that was a great way to put that. I want to shine a quick spotlight on Emmanuel Quickly as well. I mentioned that when we were talking about Fournier and about the overall lacklusterness of what Tibbs was doing late in the game with rotations. One good thing that he did do is he rode the hot hand, which was Quickly, as well as Reddish down the stretch of this game. And Quickly ends with 24 points, 5 assists. He shot 8 of 17. He kind of struggled a little bit to start this game, as he has a lot recently, but really turned it on late. And I'll say this, like, it wasn't thanks to just like getting super hot from three either. which I think is probably a good thing. He didn't really get his 3-point shot back, but I think he like got his mojo back down the stretch of this game. Like lately, he's looked very uncomfortable. Like he doesn't know how to get to his spots that he's always gotten to. And, it seemed like a lot of that was like, oh, well, the 3-pointer's not falling. So now this is just making him uncomfortable in general.
Mm-hmm.
In this game, I thought that he did a good job of like, he was putting it on the floor. He was using his head fakes and his hezzies and his guile to like draw contact and, get people uncomfortable, his opponents uncomfortable that way. As well as, like getting all the way to the rim, also utilizing the floater, drawing fouls, shot 8 free throws, made 7 of them. Like that's a great number for him. I just thought it was a really great game for him. Hopefully a sign of things to come where I hope the 3-point shot comes back around too, but I thought this was a good step in the right direction for him.
Yeah, it's a good game for Quickly. Quickly is another one who I feel at whatever point in the future when the Knicks modernize, if he's still on the roster, I think he will benefit from it a lot. Quickly had a nice game. Quickly is at his best when he just looks like he's playing basketball, and that's what he looked like in this game. I am very interested in seeing, because Quickly every season has, droughts and then really hot spells and then droughts and hot spells. And he has impressed by continuing to evolve as a player, regardless of whether his shot is falling or not. But I'm especially on this upcoming West Coast trip very interested in, if Quickly catches fire on this trip, I'm very interested to see like what the outcome could be for the team, because they are a different kind of threat when Emmanuel Quickly is hot and doing all the other things that he does. And we haven't really, the expectation, I think, coming into the season was, I thought like, oh my God, they've got Quickly off the bench. They've got Derrick Rose off the bench. Thibodeau's going to start Fournier. So they've got Grimes off the bench. They have all this firepower and shooting off the bench. It really hasn't been there. It really hasn't been healthy or available or clicking. And again, whether you think Thibodeau deserves any breaks or not, if they're 6 and 7 and Quickly starts hitting and Grimes works up to where he can play, I don't know, I'll forget Grimes. I don't know what's going on there. Quickly starts hitting shots, and the Knicks come home from this trip, and instead of being 6 and 12, they're, I don't know, 10 and 10. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows,
yeah,
man?
I guess we'll see. He is certainly one of those players where he's been, to my eye and to many's eyes and to the eyes of the advanced stats, been influencing things very positively out there, whether he's making shots or not.
Yeah.
But obviously, if he makes the shots, it takes the whole thing to a whole new level, and perhaps elevates that bench unit to being their like god tier status again, among other things. So we'll have to see how that all goes. I'm going to just throw out a couple quick last notes here, and I'll throw you the floor too if you have any last little notes you want to make. Obi Toppin, 10 points in 15 minutes, but the key stat there is only 15 minutes. I thought he played really well, but to your point a minute ago, did not get more opportunity, which seemed like a shame in this particular game when the Knicks really need to generate some quick offense, and he's probably the best 3-point shooter right now. Julius had 25 points, a really good offensive game. Unfortunately, he, among with some others, was, some other key players on the team, was really part of the uninspiring defensive game, which is not good. You don't want to see that. And he sort of, with that last unit, got it together a little bit, but it was definitely, as with everybody, it was too little too late. RJ was just terrible all around. This game, these type of games can't happen anymore. Like, you're a $30 million player now. Like, as of, okay, this year you're a 8 to 10 million, whatever dollar player. Fine. Enjoy this while it lasts. Cause next year, like, these kinks need to be worked out. Like, you can't have 3 games in your first 13 where you shoot like 18%, and, are taking a huge shot diet, getting in foul trouble. And especially when your shots aren't falling, not playing equally hard on defense to make things work better for your team, it just can't happen. Like, this was a terrible game for RJ, and like, these got to go because you can't keep having games like this. So I think that's my final thought. Miranda, if you want to, do you have anything else that's kicking around in your brain before we sign off?
One thing that's starting to strike me is that I think this team, if you dream of them, winning as many games as they can and getting as far as they can this season, they're going to need the bench to carry, I think, a lot of the weight because, and this is the thing I put on the front office, you have a starting lineup full of 2-point players. Randall takes twos, takes a lot of threes, but Randall does most of his work inside the arc, ideally. Barrett's best inside the arc, even though he gets hot from three. Brunson's best inside the arc. Mitchell Robinson, to me, that 4-year deal already looks a little funky because I do not see how a lineup with Mitch, Randall, Barrett, Brunson, unless the fifth guy is like Steph Curry, I don't see how that's ever going to work. And I think it's to the detriment of it's that very Knicksy thing that they've done, at least going back to, hey, let's put Patrick Ewing and Bill Cartwright together. Hey, let's put Glenn Rice and Sprewell and Houston together. Melo and Chandler and however you want to look at it, you are not getting the most out of those 4 guys by having all 4 of them together. And to me, whatever that means for the future is whatever. But for this season, it means we need Quickly, we need Grimes, we need the bench to get going and get rolling. Because really, since Thibodeau has been here, that has been the Knicks' path to success. Has been the starters holding their weight and the bench pushing the team over. And I think that's going to have to happen until they figure out a more complementary starting 5 than what they have.
I am with you. It's gonna be interesting to see how things go, both with keeping Tibbs and potentially if the Knicks decide to move on from Tibbs, how a new coach would try to approach this conundrum. Because
so sound like you're in. If James Dolan calls you today and says, Alex, what do I do with Thibodeau? Are you ready right now to say he's gone? He's gone.
Fire today. Yeah.
Okay. And then you're elevating Johnny Bryant?
Yeah. I would elevate Johnny Bryant.
Interim coach at the end of the
year. Give him the interim tag. He's gotten head coaching interviews, plenty of places at this point. So clearly
players like him.
Yeah, there's something there that people see, that people think is worth exploring. So explore it and see how it goes. And if he gives the team that bump, that a lot of interim coaches do, then look into potentially giving him a deal to coach the team next year with a full training camp and everything. If they still underperform, then I would say just have him interview against a bunch of other candidates and see if he still looks good. And then the other option is if the team would kind of go the tanky route, then you kind of can't really judge him on what the wins or losses are and just kind of start looking at, well, how do individual players look at this point? So I guess we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that would be my move. And I mean, to be clear, I would have fired Tibbs February of this year. I was fully on that train last season. Gavin and I had 3 straight episodes where we were like, why have they not fired him yet? Because this is really bad. The team looks terrible. And so I talked myself into the beginning of the season thinking, okay, maybe the Tiger will change his stripes. The stripes are still the same. So I'm ready to fire him tomorrow for all I care. I wouldn't let him see another week as coach of the Knicks, but that's just me. I think realistically, they'll probably start looking at it around game 20. Because I think that's always just kind of been the benchmark where if we think about it, 3 games ago would have been where the infamous Mills and Perry press conference came, where they apologized to the fans and everything for how bad Fizdale was. And by 22 games, they had Fizdale out after saying the 20 games was their eval window. So, I think that time is coming soon for Tibbs. As you said, there's this big West Coast trip coming up. Maybe this is a sort of a barometer to see how things go. But where are you at? Are you at what point are you saying fire him?
I give him another month. I would give him another month. Only because I want to see. I say that based on the idea that Grimes is probably not fully healthy, and that's why he's playing 5 minutes a game. I want to see Thibodeau. I want to give him a month. I think it's a little early. Again, I can't fire him yet for the results, and I feel like because he has surprised me a little bit in terms of he's playing Toppin and Randall, maybe that's forced on him, but like Mike Woodson didn't dream of playing Melo at the 4 on his own. Like that shit was forced on him. The key is, Woodson went away from it next year, and no, he didn't. But the key is, do you stick with it? And so far, that Randall Toppin pairing keeps getting minutes, so that's something I give Thibodeau credit for. You do not hear anonymous gripes and leaks and whispers from players complaining. Like that's been pretty uniform in his time here with all the shit that he's done and people's roles who have been diminished and expanded. You don't really hear a lot of griping. So I would give him a month. I would at least give him the month and see like where is this team in a month. If this team in a month is, like you said, starting to slip under 500, I don't doubt this organization will can him. At all. I mean, you don't have to. You can trust on the Knicks to fire a coach, but I would still give him a month.
Well, only time will tell what ends up happening, but I think we've reached our logical end of it. We came full circle right back to Tibbs again, just like all things.
It's all Tibbs, all things Tibbs.
The cyclical Tibbs discussion algorithm or something. I don't know. We just discovered it. Miranda, you want to remind everybody where to find your work and find you online and all that good stuff before we sign off?
Twitter still exists, so I'm still there at Miranda. Sorry, now it's Matthew E. Miranda. You can find Jackman Sports Show is on Spotify, Apple, all your favorite listening platforms. Jackman Sports Show. Believe is at BelieveKnicks.com. Postingandtoasting.com to the strict.land. Yeah, that's where you can find me.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for popping on with me. Thank you all for listening. What a way to start your Monday, talking about an embarrassing loss. But luckily there's some more games this week and more things to talk about, and we'll be here 5 days a week for you guys as always. So until next time, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace.